my audio still bad?
It's
No.
not great, but it's
I
there.
could be in one of those old Bruce Lee movies.
That's exactly what it looks like. It really is. Your lips are not matching your audio. Be
Oh man.
water.
I had a one time when I was in junior high school. She said I was walking up the gymnasium bleachers at a basketball game in junior high, and she said, "Hey, come here for a second." I walked over there, and she goes, "You look like Bruce Lee."
This is so bad, Jake.
I'm
This is
like,
so
"No, I
bad.
don't." I'm like, "No, I don't. I don't even look anything like Bruce Lee."
Mm, mm-mm.
Do you see a fort? Do you see a quad screen?
I see a quad screen and I hear bugs. Like it sounds like the Bugs Bunny and Tweety show. Porky Pig talking. I never saw it go to the 3-2-1 live thing. Is
Well,
it live? Yep. Still getting an echo from Jake.
still getting echo from Jake. Check, check. Well, my
Mhm.
hear you through my headphones, and I see my audio bug working. Bars right now, which usually means it's clean. I went upstairs while we were disconnected and screamed at my family again. Um, but they weren't online, so I don't know.
Lumberjack waterfowl. Do you mean a literal angle? Do your cast mean a literal angle to the dog, or are they just a general direction? For example, does a right left hand back mean 1 o'clock versus 2 o'clock, 45-degree angle of your arm? Yes, every time. Literally speaking, do this stuff. So yes, when I am doing a literal angle, I am pointing at where I want the dog to go in a two-dimensional screen or two-dimensional form. So I'm not reaching forward. I'm trying to stay as up and down as I can. You can pretend that there's a glass pane in front of you. You're putting your hand on the glass and you're rubbing your hand on the glass and going straight up and down or straight side to side. But no, I am not a general direction person. I am very much. I'm trying to get these dogs to be precise as I possibly can. And as y'all can tell, I've got the children running wild. Audio's, I'm certain, working on my end. Guys, we're having issues right now.
Am I any better? Is that better now?
That is better. Keep trying.
Well, I don't know what I did.
Yeah, but I mean, you're almost perfectly synced now.
How about now?
I mean, yeah, this is the best that you've been so far. You haven't started stuttering again.
Well, I'm glad. Let me see what we can do here. How does that look?
This is the best it's been so far. It only took us 30 minutes to get there.
27. Well, do we want to go with this lesson? If this is going to work, then can you hear? I mean, is my audio coming in okay?
You're fine now.
Okay.
Huh. Everything's good.
So I got to hold my arm like this. Ha.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really, this is, for whatever reason, this is what happens when you switch nights. See, everything was good on Wednesday, and now we're having to change things.
And the whole reason, just let me explain, the whole reason we had to change nights is because my son is playing baseball now, which I'm really excited about because he's pretty darn good for a 6-year-old. And his baseball games land at 6:30 on Wednesday nights, my time, which is 8:30 your time. And it's just, I can't miss his games. I'm just way too excited about it. And he knows I want to be there for him. So anyway, here we are. Well, welcome to the Retriever Connection with Stephen Durrance and Jake Latondras most of the time. tonight we're going to talk about, we have two different series of videos. We do have a left to right tune-up drill on a different pond, which you can see in the diagram. And then if we get to it, we have a 5 bumper zigzag drill, which is what Steven asked me to do at the end of last week for homework. And we did, and it's fairly uneventful, but I'm sure I did some things to screw it up. So there's probably a whole lot more to talk about than I even think there is. So where do we start?
I want to know, so is this drill is going from right to left, is that correct?
Left to right, but I skipped the first bumper, so it's only 4 blinds now.
Okay, so we're going the same direction that we were before. Where show me with my cursor, where's my where is the line that you're starting from on this one?
Go left, 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 about probably somewhere right in there, maybe.
Okay. And the first one straight across, is that right? And
Yep.
That's the one that we're not going to see?
Correct.
About right here?
Yep. And then these are a little bit further apart because it's a longer pond. It's probably about 100 and I'd say about 120 yards to the far right corner. So they're probably about 35 yards apart.
Is your last one in the corner?
Correct. And I have to tell you something, Stephen, and everybody else. There's an old man. If you look up in the far right-hand corner in the house with the big wide apex frame on it, there's an old man who's obviously debilitated, and he's in a wheelchair, and he can't speak. I think he had a stroke, and he sits. When I go train on this pond now, he comes outside, and he sits on his porch, and he watches me and Tanner train, and every time I have to walk past his house to get to my house, and he gives me a big old thumbs up. So I thought about all of you guys the first time I saw that, because as I went past him, it made me feel really good about what we're doing, because he enjoys sitting out there watching us train. So, with all the bad news out there that's distributed, there's hope, and there's something good that we're doing. So I just want to mention that.
Is that somewhat accurate?
It's pretty much 1, 2, 3, 4. There's probably one too many. There's 5 bumpers.
Yeah, but you axed out the first one, which is right here. This one's gone.
So now
we're gonna.
So they're no
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I see what you're saying. Hold on. I can fix this. That makes it look less busy too. How about now?
Perfect.
Okay, so we're axing number 1. We're not doing that one. One, because if y'all remember last week's conversation, Tanner was getting too good at blind number 1. We needed to move. He's always getting blind number 1 too easily. So we talked about making the tune-up drill more dynamic, and also for streamlining our conversation, we're not doing blind number 1. So what he's got queued up is blind number 2, correct?
I think so. I think so.
Good Lord willing.
Yeah.
Let's give it a shot.
Let me just see where it is.
There's one orange bumper on the ground, so Detective Durant says,
yes, sir.
This is blind 2.
That's right. That's right. That is definitely our biological indicator.
There we go.
You ready?
Yes, sir. I lost what happened right there, Jake.
Are you what are you seeing on the screen?
I'm watching him I guess swim back.
Oh, he's already swimming back?
Yeah.
Okay.
So while you're working on that, old cut down says you get good on left to right. Would you run right to left for several days? Yes, you like I said, what Rex Carr always advocated was you spend at least a week's worth on each tune-up drill. So when we're starting our very beginning tune-up drills, we typically do usually at least 2 weeks each way, just at the very beginning.
Okay, here we go. Is that playing right now?
Right. Yeah, you're playing. Everything looks good. Tanner's looking back at blind 1. That looked like a fairly decent line, and you're not adjusting his line. So obviously, now again, this was last week, and I haven't watched these videos since last week. But if I remember right, this blind drill in general was much better than the previous time. So even though Jake wasn't running the same spot, Tanner was picking up on the concept, and just like old Cut Down asked, just because a dog picks up gaining water one way doesn't mean it automatically translates to the other way. So you do need to make sure you balance this out. And how about that? We lined it. That looks like sporty stuff right there. Y'all stay tuned, because I do remember this did give a little bit of interesting stuff later.
We deteriorated the further right we got.
and one of the things we talked about last week as well. All right, so we skipped blind 1. That was blind 2, and Tanner lined it. That was really, really stellar stuff. And we're going to move on to blind 3 and see if that same thing translates. But one of the points to be made here is I pointed out that the dog was getting better at the basics, that he's getting better at 1, he's getting better at 2. You'll start to see him struggle around 3 or 4, and the trouble is around 4 and 5. So one of the best ways to help add to the dynamics of this is get some other blinds that are going to complicate these factors. That was one of the things I intended to talk about last week, was the how we can increase the difficulty of these tune-up drills as well. However, we had so much to talk about last week. We stayed busy watching one video. All right, so you're about to go to blind to video to blind number 3. Is that correct, Jake?
Correct.
Super. And one thing, guys, that we were informed of last week is that the videos actually look better in a 4 screen instead of a 3. That's why we continue to change them in and out, because they're actually bigger and easier to see, I'm assuming, on everybody's computer.
I gotta let it catch up to itself.
Okay, Boone asked, would you move Jake's line farther left and make blind number 1 straight across to incorporate a down the shore blind, or prefer to work on one thing at a time? Boone, that is a good question, but this is only, like, if I remember right, like a 35-yard swim. If we were to, Jake, if we were to move your line over here to this corner, that's not a super long swim. Is that correct?
It's not, but it is longer than the other pond. I would say it's at least 40 yards from shoreline to shoreline, straight across. So it's probably 50 yards from line to bumper.
And that's not bad. Boone, we'll talk about this a little bit more, I hope, as we go. But that's not terrible. However, that's not enough shoreline to really get a good workout in with a dog at his level. So the thought of changing your line is not a bad thought. Don't hold on to that thought. We'll hopefully build on that as we go. You got your next one ready to go, Jake?
Is it playing?
Yeah, it's playing.
Two bumpers down. We're on number 3.
That's right.
Phew.
Detective Latondra. She could have never been a cop with that last name.
Let me ask you something. Why does he do? Was he looking back at blind number 1 again right there?
He was definitely looking back at, I would guess, blind 2, because that's the one he just came from.
Okay.
But remember that genetic propensity to perpetuate success. The dogs have a genetic inclination to do what they've done the time before, because that's what brought them success. And that is the point of this drill, is that to continue to increase your gradient of water and to get the dog to look for more water each time. That doesn't just translate, guys, in the larger scope of things. What we're looking for dogs to do, speaking in context of competition, is we're looking for them to hit the water and look to gain water rather than hit the water and look to take less. So if every time the dog hits the water, they look for the shortest swim, that is reducing water. If they hit the water and look for a bigger swim, that's gaining water. So whether it be in competition or in hunting, it's a whole lot easier to cast toward the bank than it is towards the middle of the pond or the middle of the river. So if the dog is learning to hit the water and gain water each time it hits the water, it's going to put itself in a better position 9 times out of 10. Can we agree on that? So remember, these tune-up drills, we're talking about the elemental aspects, but there's also a lot of other things that this is going to translate to in later training. And later, this is, again, about establishing a good mindset toward water work. So does that answer a couple questions on your end, Jake?
Mm-hmm. And cut down. Did you address that, Stephen? You get good left to right.
I did. You know what? By the way, Jake posted this week by far one of the coolest videos I've ever been a part of when he posted the ball shot shells deal where we were hunting and he was shooting over my shoulder. But that day before, I don't know if you remember back to this, Jake, but the day before I was running Mason on a blind in the water, and he had to cast out of the water up on the bank. And it took several casts, and it was a really skinny. He had jumped in and not been in the water very long. And I promise you could go back and find this on your video stuff. But I would stop and cast, and you could actually hear him whine. And he tried to stay in the water. And it took several left-hand casts to get him out of the water. And I was talking to you about the dog is trying to do the right thing. The dog is trying to stay in the water, and I'm not going to get onto a dog for trying to stay in the water because he is trying to do the right thing. Now you can see the foundation that we laid that put that mindset in place. He was expecting to be cast in more water. He was expecting to have to stay in longer, and it was just such a quick in and out. He was confused momentarily. But I will take that momentary confusion over a dog not wanting to cast out of the water after he's only been in it 10, 20 feet, as opposed to the dog that is immediately hitting the water and trying to get out as soon as their feet get wet.
I mean, I could see that being, a consistent thing coming out of training where I live or where I hunt, because our water's so skinny and it is small. They don't spend a lot of time in the water in those sloughs, because they're only 15 to 30 yards wide, typically.
And the other side of that's very seldom. And 2, once they hunt it in a couple times and figure out it's embarrassing how quick your training goes away when they figure out, I'm going to get in and then get out immediately. Oh, okay, I got that.
Well, is it an on-off switch or a toggle switch that goes into a different mode, or is it a deterioration of your training?
It's more of an association and understanding what's going to be expected in that environment, because I promise you there's probably not a hole on your place now that Tanner doesn't know already, and knows when he gets to that spot what to expect there. Mm-hmm. And that's the stuff that comes with hunting. And if he's giving you an untrained response, if he is, for instance, trying to bail on water, if you tweet and start, all of a sudden that will jar his trained responses again. He will feel an increased level of pressure and go, you know what, I need to give a positive modification. This is a really neat pond to start these drills on. I mean, you need to have enough swim, addressing the distance question on the pond. You need to have enough swim for the dog to have the opportunity to swim. It needs to be at least 30, 40 yards to start these drills. And it needs to be not so big that the dog's gassed after one blind, because we're looking to do 4, 5, 6, 7 blinds in these drills. So you want to be able to have that balance. Jake's incredibly blessed in what he has the opportunity to train in your neighborhood.
In a subdivision, I did not design these ponds. They were already there, and I didn't know what they were going to be for me until I got another dog.
All right, kick off your next blind.
Watch him wiggle. What right here. He's looking back at number 1 or number 2.
He's certainly thinking about it, but his line was not His line wasn't bad, but he was definitely, and that's the great part about, see, Tanner's only left-sided. Now, your first cast was toward, okay, stop right there. All right, which way was your first cast? Was it toward suction or away from it?
Away from it.
Try again. Where's suction here?
Okay. The good side is to the right and
Correct.
to the left. Okay, so suction is number 2.
Correct.
Okay.
And the shorter swim. So we've said this before, and I'm going to say it again, and some of you are going to go, why? He's never said this ever. When your first cast, when you're doing blinds, when you're doing drills, and the first cast you give is toward suction, then that means suction is not becoming suction anymore, that they are actually learning the concept and trying to do better, trying to get away from what they see as not a trap, but the concept that they're being schooled to not go back to. So your first cast was a left-hand cast.
At that moment, did I confuse him or did I make the right decision?
No, you can't. When you run these drills, here's the problem, Jake. Let's say when you kicked him off, this is blind number 3 where my cursor is. If he runs blind number 4, if he runs blind number 3 on line to blind 4, and at the end you stop him and cast him over here, how much more difficult is blind 4 going to be? Because you got a couple things going there. Either he jumps in and perpetuates success, does everything that we're teaching him not to do, and swims the exact same line again, and then gets to this point and has to make a different decision to stay in or go back to where he was before. Or he doesn't want to take this line anymore, and if he's trying, he's going to be on this side of the line trying to swim on. You're muddy. It's what I call muddy in the water. If you run blind 3 and spend more time on line to blind 4, and then at the end cast to blind 3, you were better off skipping blind 3 totally and running 4 and then moving on to 5 than casting off that line that you swam the whole way across the pond and then at the end giving an over and then trying to run 4.
And then that would be a decision you would make, like on that
on
line.
the fly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you stopped early. He hit the water and you stopped him right in here and got him back online. You got to do that, because if you don't, you're going to mess up blind 4, and you either going to have to skip blind 3 or blind 4, or do even worse, get down here and give him what he really wants, which is the opportunity to just square out and bail to old suction.
I can honestly say that I hate doing something right accidentally.
But it's a great question. And this is something that Tanner wasn't showing us this in the last drill. Here, he is showing a much better schooled mindset. Even though you're in a different place, you're doing it the same way. And the other point to be made here is this is probably the more difficult way for Tanner to run this, because Tanner's only one-sided. And every time he comes back, he looks where he's been before. You can't block it off. You can't. If you're going the other way, you can physically block him from looking that way. But when you're going left to right, he's sitting at this spot, he's got to look at every place he's been and then choose to go more. As opposed to when you're running this way, change line. If you were running the blinds this way, then you could physically step up and block him. After he ran this blind, you could physically block him off. And then on the next one, you could block him off. And that doesn't mean that it's going to totally take it out of his mind, but you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
So with a two-sided dog, when we begin these drills, I'll run them on the side that blocks them away from the old fall. So this drill, like you're running, if I had a two-sided dog, I would run them on the right to push them. But before I'm done, I'm going to flip them to the left and run the same drill off the left and make them look at where they've been.
Because that's more
And
disciplined.
that's more difficult, and it also it helps galvanize that concept of water commitment, because when I am taking them and putting them on the land side of the blind and they're having to continually choose water, it actually pushes their mind to water even more, because I'm taking that crutch of blocking them away.
And you'd run the same exact location, the same setup from the left side.
Yes.
So
like I was saying, on our very initial blinds, on our very beginning, first time ever blinds, that is what we spent. We spend the first teaching time period, and that doesn't mean session. When I say time period, I don't flip sides until I see them start choosing water. And when it actually works the other way. You know, if we were talking about this concept and I was running a dog off the right, one of the big indicators that they're figuring out is if I try to run blind one and they're trying to run blind two, and then I try to run blind two and they're trying to run blind three, and that's a good time to flip them, because then I'm actually pushing them. I'm actually having to physically push them to less water. So what was natural is now unnatural. Instead of them wanting to swim across, they're trying to get out in the water, and that's a good time to flip them. And then they still continue to, okay, run this blind off the left. Now run this blind off the left as well. And if you see them start figuring it out, stay on the left. And if they start bogging down and they get to blind three and they keep wanting to run blind three, and I'm calling them back and saying, no, that's not right, then I can flip them back to the right side and run blind 4 and 5 off the right if they're struggling. So two-sidedness is not the end of the world, and it is not the answer to everything. This is just an illustration of how we use it. So your very first cast, Jake, was a left-hand cast toward what should be suction. Good, Tanner. Good, Jake. Let's keep on going.
Is it playing?
It's playing. He's making progress.
Yeah, I got it now.
He just made a decision right there. It looked like he was going more towards the bank, and you could actually see him push right to stay in a little bit more. Now, yep, see. Okay, perfect example. Stop right there. Okay, you gave the correct cast. You gave a straight up cast. And did he give you more angle? Did he give you more angle in your first cast, in your first straight up cast? Did he give you more angle than you asked for?
Just then, or the first one?
No, just then. Just your first.
I need to go back and look at it again.
This is where things start going downhill, just a little bit, because he gave you a great response. You gave your first cast with a left hand straight up. He carried it most of the way across the pond, and he started to get close. What's happening now is he's showing you he can resist anything but temptation. So he starts to get about right here where my cursor is, and he's actually offline a little bit, and you stopped and you gave a straight up cast. And again, guys, remember, he's doing this not based off the critique that I gave him last week. This video was done before we talked about getting less out of more. He just gave the right cast. What Tanner did not do was give the right response. So if I'm going to illustrate this blind, let me change a little bit.
While you're changing that, does that constitute a tweet, bring him back, and then cast him again if he doesn't?
That or a tweet, and a recast. Yes, we talked about bringing back. One of those two would be a very good illustration. So this isn't going to be pretty, guys, but here we go. Tanner was off to the, oh, I got to make that line bigger. Hold on. Let's see if this is any better. Yeah, that's better. Let's make it a little bit bigger. All right, so Tanner took off here. Jake got a correction right here. He gave a left-hand cast. Tanner gave a decent response, made progress, started to get over here, and Jake stopped him and gave another cast at this point. This is where he exposed himself. Jake gave a right hand straight up, and Tanner, rather than, if Tanner's trying, remember, if he stops him and gives him a cast, Tanner should modify his line before the cast is even there, because in his mind, Jake would have never blown the whistle had Tanner been headed in the right direction. So at this point, if you'll pay attention, Tanner was headed this way, right? That's where his arrow was pointed when you stopped him. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, he was definitely drifting left.
And you stopped and gave him a cast telling him to go at very bare minimum this way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if Tanner was trying, this blue line would have been the very minimum he would have given. If his mind is getting more towards water, he would have probably given you something to the right of the line, of the blue line. But what did he do? He continued on the yellow line. So go back and watch it again. Back it up to that cast and watch what happens here. And this is where you're really starting. We can start talking about how you can cast better, how you can correct better. And this is also Tanner showing an unschooled mindset.
I got a question before we move on. So my thought was, okay, he's still too close to that line for me to stop him. I knew he was going to keep drifting left, but I felt like I needed to allow him to get a little bit further away from my line to stop him and cast him. And then when he always loops to the left, to my left, and then he's that much further offline by the time he gets turned around to me, then I thought, I'm going to give him a straight back cast. And if you notice, I'm not stepping in my casting on during this drill. But I'm not telling you what I'm doing. I'm asking you if those thoughts, I don't even know if my thoughts are in the right.
Well, the thing to remember is you can't get a dog to be any more precise than you are. So you shouldn't necessarily, if you're working on getting bigger directional change, then let them get offline more. But that's not necessarily what you're looking for here. I have a tendency to let the dog get much more offline if they are on the watery side, but not interfering with the next line. I'll let them have more latitude right here than I will over here because of the suction involved.
Mm-hmm.
So your whistle sets were not wrong. Your decision making was not inaccurate. But I want everybody to see what his response was.
Okay.
All right, so he's swimming here, and he's starting to drift, and Jake's thinking about it, and he's torn. He blows the whistle. Straight up cast, which was good. Tanner says, I don't think so. Your whistle was late there. So, you see, you changed your angle. Stop right there.
Yeah.
So your whistle was a little bit late. He started to bail. You could have caught him a little quicker because, remember, that's like a snowball rolling down the hill. He's not going to look at that bank and then go, you know what, that I really don't think that was a good idea. Maybe I'll reevaluate. He's already told you, you did great. Tweet, Nick, tweet, or tweet, and the exact same straight up cast is what you needed right there. Make him give you the angle that you asked for second, but doing it in a straight up cast. Make him change his mind, not you beg him to change.
That's where I asked him to do something different because he didn't do it right the first time. And I should have given him the same exact cast until he gave me what I wanted him to do.
Yes, at the minimum. And remember, if he gets frustrated and gets mad and says, man, I don't know what to do, and he's bailing and you're calling back, and he's bailing and you're calling back, and he's bailing and you're calling back, and all of a sudden he gets mad and goes this way, good dog. There's got to be a way to win. You can't, if he gets frustrated in this concept and he goes this way, there's got to be somewhere that they can win. What you don't do is when he goes this way is you immediately stop him again right here.
Mm-hmm.
And then try to cast him back down the way. He's not far enough out the well yet. Let them go. This is where I will let them go over to here and then cast.
So you get a commitment out of him. He knows
Yes.
he just made a decision that wasn't wrong.
Yeah, and I'm obviously not looking for it over in this situation, but you got to understand, as the behavior escalates and he's trying to figure out, there's got to be a good side of things. There's got to be a black and there's got to be a white. And if he's and all this right here, that's gray. And you're trying to make what is gray more black and white. And when they all of a sudden, if he won't, I didn't mean to do this, but I pointed out where his arrow was pointing initially. And when he all of a sudden says a 90-degree difference, you got to let him have that, because he's already tried to do wrong 2 or 3 times, following where his arrow was pointing. And when his arrow turns and goes 90 degrees away from that, you got to reward that at some point in time.
So, not a confession, but admission. I did this, and I'm going to talk about him getting mad at me and that drawing anxiety out of me, because I just want to share this experience, because I did this and my phone quit recording right in the middle of it, so I don't have it on film, or I'd show it to you. But I did this after we talked about it last week, and he got mad at me, and because I kept calling him back, kept trying to do it. And I'm telling you, I don't know what it was, but I got nervous, or I had anxiety or something. It worried me because he was freaking out. Like he was tripping on himself in the water doing figure eights, or he didn't know. He got really confused, and it gave me anxiety.
Well, and that's where you got to go back and remember, you said it last week. You got to really, that shows you don't trust what I told you, and that's there's nothing that you can do to mess this dog up. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm so scared to do that. Kendra told me that I could do a new one, and I'm scared. I'm scared to do a blank one, because I'm afraid I'm going to lose what I've got. But the other thing to remember, let me back this up, but I can do the illustration right here. All right. Blue line, go in this way.
All
right. So
everybody, just while we're talking into this next sequence that Steven's going to go over, do you guys get anxious out there too? Or am I like, do I need to start looking at some pills or something?
Part of what you were dealing with, and this happens with attrition. Do you remember back when we talked about how dogs see whistle sits as walls, as little walls, as little, 6-foot lows, pre-made fence panel? You put the fence panel out wherever you had your whistle sit. So what happens a lot of times, and what made him spin, like you were talking about, is, let's say that you're running blind 4 and he's trying to bail to the bank, and you get a whistle sit and you build a little wall right here, and then you cast again and he bails, and you call him back to that same spot, and you build another wall, and you build another wall, and you build another wall, and then they all of a sudden, rather than building small walls, it turns into a big wall, and they don't know where to go. And this is another reason why they will turn and go straight to water, because this is a wall and they don't know how to get through it. And it's just a bunch of mental walls. And they finally say, man, I got to get away from this. And they swim away from that wall. Is this not exactly what happened to you when he was spinning circles and all of a sudden he said,
I didn't let it go far enough. I mean, I'm gonna, this is the confession. I just called him back.
Oh no! I take it back. You can ruin my dog.
I wasn't going to tell you, Stephen. But we're being honest here, right?
But you see this happen a lot of times with young dogs when they're just learning how to run blinds. They get a couple of whistle sets that are kind of close together, and it kind of freaks them out, and then they want to get away from it. That is probably why I have a tendency to to use more of a light nick when a dog does wrong. When we're talking about a dog at Tanner's level, remember, when we're talking about basic tune-up drills in general, they're all attrition based at the beginning. You want to stay away from collar pressure. But once they're schooled on the concept and we're doing it in different places, I have a tendency when a dog digs to the bank like that, tweak, nick, tweak, I don't do a pile of recalling unless we get in the ditch and can't get out of it. But this is what happened. He had a bunch of walls out there and he didn't know what to do. And again, that's where you as a handler, what you didn't know is that the bailout cast, it can't be towards the bank. It's got to be towards the more water side. You could have just given him an over and he'd have swam over here and then you could have got back on the track. Or you could have skipped blind 4 and gone to blind 5 and there wouldn't have been any harm, any foul, except you got to walk around the pond, pick up your other bumper. But that's what happened right there. When you build all those little walls and all of a sudden they start touching, especially if you put a collar correction in here, it makes it an even bigger wall.
I got you. It makes all the sense in the world as to why he reacted the way he did. And understanding what you just said, I could have been 2 seconds away from him giving me the right response or him filling himself out. And I did not trust the.
I mean, what were you worried was going to happen there? Was he going to drown?
Yeah. I mean,
Were the neighbors going to come outside and say, "Are you killing the dog?"
That would have been more likely than.
And that was with you not even putting collar pressure, right?
Mm-hmm. It was just whistles. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's right.
And what happened right there? The reason he reacted that way is he's going, man. This is how I've gotten away with it from this guy from the start. And all of a sudden now, he's going to start calling me on this stuff. So he got frustrated. All right. Oh man, I clicked off of my comments so I could look at the screen a little better and got a bunch in between. Jeff said, should we keep the dog on tight lines with this drill? That's, again, there's an art and a science. Yes, you need to keep them on a tight line, but you don't need to let you got to understand when you got to give them a little angle, like what Tanner's doing right here when he's bailing for the bank. I don't mind letting them progress more over here, but you don't want to get where you're muddying the water for your future lines, and you sure don't want to be on the previous lines either. You don't want to run this blind 3. As bad as it is to run it on blind 4, it's just as bad to run it on blind 2 and then get that big overcast at the end as well. So I guess the answer to that is definitely maybe, Jeff. Yes, more than no, but there are times that you need to let them carry a cast if they're frustrated. All right, did he show us any more at the end of this one, Jake? You gave a straight up, he dug, you stopped and gave an angle, and I don't know what happened after that. I heard a whistle, but I don't see anything moving yet. There we go. I don't know if that was your second big angle or your first.
I think that was my second. I backed it up.
Okay. Now, we're going to give us a big old, yep. So you never got back to the line off of that. So going back to our conversation from last week, stay with your straight up cast there. Use attrition or use tweak, nick, tweak to get you a bigger directional change. How much collar pressure can you put on a dog in the water? Can and should are two different things, and that is entirely dependent on the dog. Some dogs, I mean, collar pressure is magnified in water, one, because electricity conducts better in water, and two, and more importantly, when it comes to this concept, it slows the dog down. They can't react as fast, and it's an unnatural medium. And that's what makes them a little bit more concerned, confused, panicky in water, because they can't get away from it as fast. They can't modify their behavior as fast. So the punishment should match the crime. And that, yes, Hagen, that is intentionally vague. You got blind 4?
Yep. I was going to say something too. I have more of an appreciation about, like, when you talk about Tanner's, his tolerance for collar pressure. The other day he was chewing on one of my sheds, one of my really nice sheds. I came downstairs and I got mad at him and I literally tackled him. I don't know if I can say that, if that's but I was like, man, I just tackled him really hard and he did not give a crap. Like I don't know if he's goofy or if he's just tough.
Now, this goes back again. Same thing that makes a dog good, same thing that makes him bad. It takes a lot to hurt his feelings. That makes him a really aggressive, tenacious dog in a hunting environment. And it also makes him now that you say that, when you sent me the link and I checked, I got on here about 7:35 and you weren't there. And I told Kendra, I said, Tanner's chewing on something. And I think that's what it was.
That's what it was. It was the same one. And then 2 days later, he goes and gets I've got a pile of sheds over there. And these are antlers, deer antler sheds.
Big shed.
A pile of them. And he goes over there and gets the same one out.
Well, the problem, Jake, is that's not your shed. That's his shed.
It is. Now. I'm like, okay, you're not a duck hunter anymore. You're a shed hunter. You're one of those goofy dogs.
All righty.
Here's number 4. Ready?
Yep. That's not a bad line. Jake don't know if he should blow the whistle or not. Yeah. No, let me see if I can see the bumper over there. Oh, I'm just going. Now, this is one thing to point out. I mean, you're showing a little bit of uncertainty in your body language, going back to how dogs read. Now, hey, Tanner's doing a good thing right there. You see how he's gaining water? He's choosing water right there. He's shouldering into that water. That's a good thing. Yes, I will recall on this drill once they start getting the concept down. Wow, what a terrible angle. Pause right there. Paul, so the question was, well, you recall on this drill. This drill starts as a casting drill and ends as a lining drill. The more that they understand the concept, I don't call back much the first couple of days, but once they start getting it, I will recall. So did he bail that hard left when you gave that big angle cast, Jake, or did you let him get that far offline that time?
I let him get that far offline because he was just drifting.
Okay, so I would point out that what is the definition of insanity?
Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome.
Okay, so what were your last 3 casts before on this blind? On blind 3, what were your last 3 casts?
It was Einstein's definition of insanity.
This is the stuff that you don't even realize you're doing until you're watching it on video.
Yeah, I know.
And this goes back to my point as well. It took till blind 3 before Tanner showed. Oh my gosh, the holy over. If he takes that cast, where does he go? Back to the question about is this a directional thing or is this a precise cast? If he took a precise cast right there, he goes out the very end of the channel.
Mm-hmm.
So we have abandoned.
No matter what I do, he's not doing what I'm asking him to do.
And this was because you were scared to correct. You didn't understand how to correct. And I'm sure that this won't happen again in this manner. You'll screw it up another way, but in this manner, you've got this part figured out, I believe.
Yeah, I think redundancy has taken over at this point.
This is good stuff, Jake. I appreciate you putting yourself out here like this.
No, so that's the question I was going to ask you. So if we get that far and he gets to the bank, he's on land, and should I cast him to the blind or should I let him hunt?
Okay. The second question is not an option at all. This is not a blind. This is not a hunting scenario. We don't let him hunt to the blind. You let him start hunting to the bumper, you are going to be in a bad world of hurt when you need a cast when he smells something. So handle him in training. Handle him to the location. 2, when he beaches that far left, what's the worst thing that you could do to Tanner? This is not an answer for most dogs, but for this dog, what is the worst thing in the world you can do to Tanner? Think back to downstream water blinds.
Back in the water.
Yeah, call him back all the way. In the water is a minor thing. If he beats you that far left and you call him back, Okay, so back to my illustration. If he comes over here, let's see if I can change this thing again. I'm not good with this yet, guys, but I'm getting better. Okay, so
I hope you
if
got
he comes over here and if he beaches right here and you build a wall and you call him back in and cast, you're going to get something good. But if he beaches over here and here, that wall becomes that wall. Because the harshness of your correction had nothing to do with collar, it had nothing to do with anything other than the fact that you made him swim all the way back and start over. He ain't going to want to do that part again.
Mm-hmm.
So your wall, that's the difference in the severity of your correction between calling back in the edge of the water and calling back in all the way across.
God, I wish I could go back and do that over right now just to see what he would do if I called him all the way back.
He would not be happy.
No, yeah, no.
But that, again, and for a younger dog, for a dog that has their feelings hurt a lot easier, I would certainly not want to do that. But you talk about the difference in playing chess and checkers. You bring Tanner from right here where he thinks he's got it all figured out and he's going to get it his way, and you bring him all the way back across the pond and make him do it again, he'll be tripping on his bottom lip when he gets out on the bank on your side.
When my prediction would be if I called him all the way back, when he got to me and I sat him at heel, he would be down, like pointed right where he would be ready to go on the next end, like without me cueing him or anything. He would be down, spring loaded.
And if he came back and did that and picked line 5, I'd probably run blind 5.
Okay.
And skip blind 4, because this is close to that wall. And if he chooses more water after he chose less,
he just made a good decision. Okay.
Yep.
I'm glad you said that.
I'm not saying immediately skip it. I'm just pointing out
sure
what I saw.
All right. So we're gonna ditch this one and go to number 5, right?
Yep.
Because we've seen enough of that one. God, I hope number 5 isn't as bad.
I got bad news for you, Jack. It ain't no better.
No.
That is a sharp hat you keep showing everybody too.
Look at my new hat. Can you
think that's something pretty?
It fits right too. Okay.
That was a really, really good initial line. And the thing I cautioned you on there is make sure it's a good line for the sake of a good line, not a good line because he's thinking about running down the bank farther.
And I feel like
that goes back to balance
deliberately.
So good for him right here. Jake's deciding, do I want to give this 45-degree cast again that I've given 5 or 6 times in a row now?
Give him an over now or wait?
Really good line. I got to make this thing a little bigger so I can see him.
I think this was a good line, as I recall.
I wanted to say it went bad at the end. I could be wrong. Again, I watched it last week. Oh, what we going to do? Oh, that wasn't as bad as your other cast, but. Hold on. We whistling. We carrying a cast.
I think
oh, baby.
Gosh.
Oh, you're relaxing.
My shoulders went down. I have anxiety right now watching this.
Hey, that was great. That was better. Oh my gosh! Did you see how far he ran? Oh my goodness! Now, when he shot right, was he going to something else, or was the bumper where he ran back to?
The bump?
Like he got out on the bank and then he ran hard to the right and then he came back and he went up the hill.
Yeah, I don't remember what he was running at. There's a bunch of bullfrogs in that pond.
The only thing I would tweak there, and it's hard to tell, Jake, is I can't tell if you went out the very corner or if you got out at the very end. Typically, I have a tendency on this type drill to put that last one at the biggest swim I can. And I would rather miss to the right edge of the elbow than the left edge just because it shows that little bit of increased water commitment that they're looking for water till the end.
Probably the reason I did it is because there's the inlet is right there from the other pond that we tried.
Yeah.
And so I used, that was really sort of my right boundary.
Okay. Super.
All right.
So are you feeling, tell me about your feeling on this in general right now.
Well, I'm feeling like we just watched something that I know more about. I knew more about at the end of last week than I did when I ran this. So it doesn't really represent what I feel like I've learned from last week, relative to what I would go do yesterday, say before this lesson. I do feel like on these drills that I'm learning one or two. Maybe I should be learning at a faster pace. I don't know. But I learn one or two things each time, and the redundancy running this drill over and over again. And maybe it goes back to when you quote Rex Carr saying this should be run 5 days, a 5-day drill minimum. I can see that now because I'm progressing a little bit each time, but I'm only remembering one or two of the major mistakes that I'm making. And now when I go out and run this today, I don't make those. I don't make an overcast or a 45, angle back. It's pretty much, tweet, tweet, tweet. I call them back, tweet, 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 call them back. And then I keep doing the straight back casts. So I'm getting there. I need to go run it a few more times for sure. But we're slowly getting there.
Okay. So what do we want to talk about here? Do we want to talk about how we can complicate this drill?
Yes, because I think that's the next step, because 1, 2, and 3 are easy now.
Yep.
1 and 2 for sure. 3 is getting pretty easy. 4 and 5 is where things really erode. Okay.
So you can call this tune-ups. If you want to call this a little different, you could call it walking tune-ups. The good news and the bad news is the wrinkles in this thing are infinite. They really are. So I have, and you can, when you get super advanced, you can start coming into some. Right now, what we're trying to achieve in these drills is, again, a dog having a more water mindset. I learned from watching Lardy and Pat Burns talk the other day that originally tune-up drills were they called them panic drills because you were coming back from de-cheating, aggressive de-cheating, and what that means is essentially getting the dogs very, very watery on marks as well. And they were using blind drills to get them comfortable getting in, getting out, running on technical water, where you're making them get in the water real quick, get back out, and then swim when they get back in. There's a lot there. Again, there's only so much you can do without technical water. But one of the really great things you can do to help with a drill like this, to continue to instill to get in the water and choose water more consistently mindset, is what's called a walking tune-up drill. So instead of being stationary at one point, you can change your line and essentially start Xing across lines where you've been. So a good walking tune-up drill here would be, and this is just a for instance, this is not this is by no means this is how you do it all the time, but you could come in and give a line number 1. Just this is the red lines are a whole nother drill. I want them there to be as a reference point, but this could be another drill that you run on a different day. Okay. Mm-hmm. So here's blind 1. You could come, hey Boone, here's you a good one. Here is blind 2. So you change your line and X across your line. Blind 3. That ain't bad. And blind 4. one of my personal favorites.
Down the shore.
And it's even better doing it down the shore here, especially if you've done this, the red lines for a week or two. Because then when you run this down the shore, they're going, I've been there. And it gives them more opportunity to want to get out.
You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of a buck during the rut running down a trail perpendicular to a bunch of doe trails.
Now, one thing you could also do here, yeah, exactly. He's checking everyone, right?
Exactly.
So you could continue to progress right here and exit the other way, or you could walk back over here and run another blind, and that way you're running it down the shore both ways and seeking balance. But
so
again,
am I ready for that yet? Or what would if you're
now you asked the right question there, Jake.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready? Is an answer you have to come up with. Is Tanner ready? Absolutely. Tanner is ready. But you're not ready to run that drill until you're comfortable correcting and making him give you less from more.
I feel like I have to know him better to know me better before I can do this, because I might get into a situation where I don't know what to do again.
I think coming back, you're going to have to run these drills in a couple different places, a couple different ways, because just like he showed you here, he's figured it out pretty quick. You're going to get way more comfortable with this correction concept than you think, quicker than you think. It will come a lot more natural to you because you will be comfortable knowing that you can get the correction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's going to be a big problem in the long term. But you definitely need to get comfortable doing it before you go to jumping into this, because then, you don't want to be stuck in gray. But look at the difference complexity-wise in standing in one place and getting a gradient concept and then jumping around and having all these different destinations, old falls, so on and so forth. The good news about this as well is this is another way. We've talked way too much in these first few sessions that we've dealt with. We've talked way too much about blind running and handling, but you can also start to approach these tune-up drills as cheating singles. Instead of just running a blind, imagine if you were running this mark and you're saying, okay, there's a good side of the line to the mark and a bad side of the line. The bad side's the shore side, the good side's the water side. I'm going to maintain this dog's approach and make it choose water. We'll talk about this more in depth. But one thing that will help you get more comfortable in this is doing these same type concepts as marks rather than just blinds. I'm starting to hit you on information overload here again, I know.
Yeah,
but
that leads into a completely different tangent, because my first question will be, so what does running marks do? I don't answer this question because I don't want to get that far into it yet, Stephen. Because I feel like that's switching gears. And
I'm just showing you. All I was pointing out there was how intertwined these things can be, and how it can be the same but different.
Mm-hmm. And I can see that for sure.
Miss Gloria, if you want technical water, you just talk to that sorry husband of yours and say, I want some more pretty ponds. Don't let him tell you he can't afford it. So that is a wonderful way. I mean, this pond, I saw a debate years ago about if I've got this little bit of area to work in, I need to know what kind of technical pond I can dig. And this was an online debate. The guy posted an aerial photo, and he's like, here's my spot. Here's my footprint. Let's design a technical pond. And Evan Graham, who is one of my favorite, I can't call him a mentor in that I have shook his hand and know him, but I have shaped a lot of my approaches based around a lot of his material. Evan said the best thing you can dig is a swim-by pond, because there's so much you can do with it. And this is a big version. When we talk about swim by, teaching that concept of no over and water tee and building upon that. A swim by pond looks just like this pond right here. It's just a smaller version of it. Most swim by ponds are somewhere between 20 feet and 20 yards across and probably twice as wide. And Evan's point was, when you have a channel like that, you can have so many dynamic concepts where you do exactly what I've drawn on here, and cut the corners and swim the sides, as opposed to trying to make a technical pond in here where you don't have enough space to get swims around the points and everything else. So, like I said, I'm ready for you to start taking on this challenge. But before you do, I want to, one, make sure you understand how to correct him when he starts bailing to the bank, and you get comfortable in getting a reliable direction change towards more water. And two, I want you to have a plan. I want you to have a drawn out sketch of what you are intending to do on this, and let's look at, hey, I like this blind because every one of these blinds has a concept to it. I like this blind for this reason. I don't like that blind for that reason. There is no coincidence that I ran blind one, even though you could say, hey, you're running it to less water. You're not running it off to the right. I'm running it to the biggest swim I can get, which is the corner. It might be the left side of the pond, but it's still the biggest swim I can get on that line.
Right, I got you.
And then I moved over here and I said, here's the biggest swim I can get if I point you straight.
Right. I get that. So what I'm going to do, does this sound reasonable? I'm going to go run the tune-up drill, omitting 1 and 2, probably put 4 more out, so there would be a total of 6 if I had 1 and 2. And I'm going to run it to the left side as well. I'm going to run it left to right one more time, and then I'm going to turn around and go somewhere else, or the next day or whatever, run right to left a few times.
One of the big advantages you have here, Jake, is if you're worried about changing your line over here and having trouble going this way because of interference of old locations, you can always go to the other side of the pond,
flip
and run back to the fresh side.
Well, here's how smart I am. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm going to flip the pond, and I'll go to the opposite corner, and then it'll still be left to right.
Yeah, absolutely. But you have a big advantage right here that you can do that. You can flip corners. You can run opposite sides, opposite corners, and get a whole lot of good out of this.
Okay. Well, I've got my homework. Do we want to talk about this other zigzag, or are we good for this week?
How long is the video?
3 minutes.
Let's talk about it.
I mean, it's short. It's super short, actually. And it's kind of uneventful, but since they're
And you said it was a 5 bumper. Is that correct?
5 bumper zigzag.
Okay. So a 5 bumper zigzag is going to look something like
Hey, buddy, I'm almost done. Okay.
something like this.
Correct. I'm gonna just want to make sure I got the right one here. That looks like the first one. Okay.
All right. Now the 5 is I usually do this in 5, 7, or 9. So the only thing that would be changing
is because I, like a dummy, I grabbed 5 orange bumpers and 2 white ones. And I set it up as a 7 bumper the first time, and he kept staring at the white bumpers.
Well, that's easy. You just throw the white bumpers last.
That's what I did, but he kept looking straight down the field.
No, last, not first. I mean,
Oh,
and when I say last, it would be the first two that they picked up.
Ah, okay.
You could do that. Does that make sense?
It does now. Yeah, there you go.
That would be an example of a 9 bumper. And if you pay attention, this is the illustration that I wanted to make. Look at this. And look how it looks so much like the same lines we've been drawing in tune-up drills. Same thing over here. This drill is so neat. It's so dynamic because it holds hands with the same kind of linear concept lining drills that we're doing in our field work. So the way that I do this, I sit the dog at the base. I let them watch me throw out bumpers. They can be white, orange, black, whatever you choose. I like black. Orange is what Evan Graham likes. White is what I'll use a lot of times when I've got young dogs, but I let them see me. I'll throw this one out and I'll walking toward the dog. I throw here, I throw here. I'm walking towards the dog. I throw here, I throw here. Walking towards the dog, throw here, throw here. If this is the last one they saw fall, I pick this one up. And we pick them up outside in. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Excuse me, that's a 7 bumper. You can do 9. All you got to do is add 2 more legs. So Jake did a 5, which would be here, or taking out one of the tighter lines and making the way you make this drill more difficult is you add more bumpers, and you decrease the proximity of the bumpers to each other, or you increase your distance from the farthest bumper to your line. I'm assuming you'd be inclined to use collar corrections on the land side of a blind versus the water side. Possibly. I'm jumping around here. Zigzag drills are not collar-based drills. These are lining drills, not casting drills. If the dog takes the wrong line, you stop them and you bring them back. And this is not a drill that you're using collar pressure on. And you do not, if you have trouble picking up any of the blinds, you don't throw one out there and let them pick it up and then throw it again. You never go back to these piles in your sequence. So if your dog's struggling on picking this blind up, if it's wanting to run back to blind, to your left-hand blind or your right-hand blind, if you throw a bumper to that location to identify it and let them go pick it up and then run it again, you've run this line twice. Therefore, you've made this blind more difficult. So you move up. You move up and simplify. If your dog's struggling on this blind, you move your distance closer, or you leave the dog seated, you walk out here and pick it up, show it to them and drop it and come back. But you do not run these lines multiple times. If you have 7 bumpers laid out, then you should pick 7 bumpers up, not 8, not 9, not 10. You only pick up what you laid out.
I got a question.
Okay.
So if you're running 9 and you're running, say you're running left 3 and he picks up and he gets away from you. He picks up 4. What do? Just let him come back?
I stop the dog. I walk out there. I take the bumper from them and place it back down and walk them back with me to the line.
And then you don't send him back on that line?
I send him back to the one that I originally went for.
Oh, okay.
You go back and you pick up the one that you intended.
2 bumpers later and run that line again? Okay.
So your question is, if you send for this and he picks this one up, is that correct?
Say that again.
If you send for this blind and he picks this one up, what do you do?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I stop the dog. I walk out here. I take the bumper from him. I lay it back down. I walk back over here and I resend. And I'm not going to let them get stuck over here. If I see them drift this way, I'm going to stop them quicker. No, here. Bring them back. Go through this is where you really work on establishing the communication system of dead bird, and whatever affirmation commands you use right there. Good. For me, it's more about my hand going in and saying get set than it is about those small little verbal cues. But this is where you can really start establishing a communication system as you're going through these zigzag concepts. So let's watch your video, see how it goes. So that was blind one, is that correct?
Yeah. What did you see? Hold on. I had my little thumbnail video is off cue to the big video.
Okay.
Let me replay this. No, it's not. It's not queuing. Hang on 1 second.
For baby dog season, how far are these bumpers placed? Miss Shannon, usually the farthest away, the 30 yards, 40 yards. This is low cover. This is, you don't need high grass here. You need soccer field. 30 to 40 yards. Even for my most advanced, it's usually no more than about 50 yards to the farthest line. So with young dogs, I'll start this as a 5 bumper drill, and I'll use white bumpers, and all I'm doing is trying to get them to lock in and get comfortable. Looking at, the different concepts, looking at the different locations, and leaving on a good line and holding it.
Okay.
A couple years ago.
What?
Go ahead. Go ahead. All right. So the only thing I didn't like right there, Jake, is you look nonchalant. And what I mean by that is your feet were off square. You knew that he had it, and your body language reflected that, rather than perfect practice here and really locking in and working on that. Of course he's got it. That's the point. But treat it more seriously and get him more used to you standing there and really reassuring him rather than just kicking him off.
Okay.
Because like I said, your feet were off square. It was a blasé repetition rather than a really good, thoughtful send.
I got you.
Here.
It's not a bad idea to go ahead and get yourself set up for that next one, so that when he comes in and heels to you, he's pointed at the next one. You started to do it just right, and that was good.
That came from last week's lesson, because we were talking about getting set up for the next blind, and I was for sure intentionally doing that.
Sit.
What happened there? It almost looked like you pulled your hand back before something was weird.
Delay in the video.
No.
It
was. You said back and pulled your hand back before he left. Again, the only reason your hand should move. See what I'm saying?
So it should.
The only reason your hand should move when he leaves is if his head hits it when you go. When he leaves.
I got
Don't. Again, this is all going real smooth, and y'all have done this for a while now, because this is one of the first things you and I discussed doing.
Even though I didn't do it right.
Holy moly. See, this is not a casting drill. This is a lining drill. That should have been a no-no here. And y'all remember me saying I don't use collar pressure on this drill? I'm going to tell myself I would have corrected him on that whistle set. That 40-yard turn, I would have tweeted. And what you don't want to do is complicate the concept. You don't want to build a wall out there that he's got to run through later. But sit means sit, by golly. And he was not really in a hurry to sit there.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think
this is a line drill, not a casting drill.
I was nonchalant and he was nonchalant.
Correct.
And honestly, when I ran this the other day, even if you had told me that before, I wasn't thinking that it wasn't a casting drill. That's the honest truth.
Got it. That looked like a poor line to me. He came back to it. You know, it wasn't the end of the world that he looped back. But you see what I'm saying? How he leaned right and left out. He left crooked and then corrected himself.
Is that bad when he loops around behind me that much on the return?
You know that drives me nuts.
What should I do?
And if he goes behind you like that, you should go forward as quick as you can and hear Nick here. So when he spins around, he goes, "Man, I didn't think he was that far." Remember, keep him respecting you and your space. I told one of my guys today, I said, if a dog would not turn their back, you know, if you think about pack mentality, dogs don't turn their back on things they respect, because things they respect are things that can take their life, that literally could threaten them. And when a dog starts spinning around and looking away from you like that, and they're taking you for granted and not appreciating what you represent in their life.
Okay.
At that point, there needs to be some kind of rectification of mindset.
What if it was a here, Nick, here on the return? Because that goes back to that drill we did a long time ago on the handle, you know, when he was rolling the bumpers and cigar and the bumpers, and I did a here, Nick, here, then that would trigger him into a much more disciplined response all the way back to the line.
Correct. What that would do is short circuit that bad behavior that he's doing at your side. That would short circuit it. And most of the time, I'm a big advocate of cutting things off. But if that's something he's habitual about, I would rather him do that action and get corrected in that action and try to prevent it. Okay. The other thing you can do if you want to try to short circuit that is put your back against a fence, put your back against a wall, put a couple of buckets beside you. But I'm a big advocate of giving them enough line to hang themselves and let them go ahead and be. If they want to parade. And as soon as they leave me, I'm going as fast as I can the other way, away from them. So that they spin around and they think that they're 5 feet from me. They're 15, 20, 30 feet away from me. And they get corrected all the way to me. And the next time they come in, they will spin right around and sit down and not look at that free space behind me as what they're doing there when they run past you is they're getting out of your line of sight. And dogs understand. They have a sixth sense and understanding about if you can see them or not. And they're trying to get where you can't see them so that they can have their little bit of free time for them. That's Tanner time when he goes by you. Don't that make sense?
It does. It does.
And
I saw another trainer park a four-wheeler right behind him so that he didn't give the dog room to loop behind him.
And that's preventing a bad behavior from starting, to me, more than it is rectifying a dog that's got that behavior and calling them on it. Because I can promise you, Tanner didn't learn that at my house.
No. I hear you. So what he was doing was probably a young dog, like you're saying, preventative action rather than correction when you know the dog knows what he's doing.
Yeah, this was something he had long before he came to me. Okay. And so he's just trying to translate it to you.
Okay. Here we go.
My skin's crawling. Oh, yeah, it's just an easy, non-problematic drill, Steve. I don't have any issue with that. Yeah, you can cast them. Congratulations. Jeez.
Mm-hmm. That's 4. We just got one more, Stephen.
Oh, maybe we'll see a good illustration of a zigzag drill next time.
We're getting better.
Holy moly. So how far was that just for
70 yards at the most, probably.
So that is a huge zigzag drill. I mean, that's one of the reasons that you're having to get into casting, because it is a huge 50 yards is a long way for your back pop. So go back and really work on your lines. You get your lines better. It makes you get a dog that holds a good line to start with. It makes everything else super streamlined at the end.
You want me to pull your chart?
Nope.
your drawing board away and go
Got
to screen. There you go.
Oh, I'm telling you, I'm really digging. I know I'm not good with it yet, but it has added, in my opinion, a lot to our
Tell what I'm supposed to be. So Shannon, you may have come in late, but what I'm supposed to be doing is a lining drill, not a casting drill. That's why he's crawling in his.
So every time Tanner took the wrong line, Jake was supposed to stop him. No, here, bring him back and resend. Every time Tanner took the wrong line, not stop and cast like a rank amateur, to stop him and call him back. And if the dog doesn't do the line, move up and simplify. Don't cast here. The only time I'd ever cast here is if I'm doing bumpers that they can't see really well, and they take this is a big older dog, advanced concept, and they miss it by 2 yards at 50 yards, and I just stop them and tweak just to pick it up. That's the only time that handling is acceptable in this drill. Funny story on this drill.
No? Do you say no when you tweak, come back?
I stop, no, here, and bring them back. I do this drill a lot of times in my brother's front yard. He's got a big, pretty front yard. It's only a quarter mile at the most from the kennel, and we do a lot of young dog stuff there because it's just literally pull right off the dirt road and go to work. Super basic drill. You would expect older dogs to do well at it. The day before we left, or maybe the day we left for an SRS event a couple of years ago, Mason, who is one of my top SRS dogs, he got 4th in the crown this year. Mason had a forevermore meltdown on this drill. I mean, just literally. And the reason why is because sometimes he doesn't like you to stand by him. And one of the things I was focusing on him in this drill is I was making him touch me. I was making him pull against my leg so that we were connected, and he understood what I was saying. I understood what he was doing. He was wanting to get away from me. And before I got done, I was literally straddling him, putting my foot on each side of his body, just because he was acting extra standoffish, and he was having a fit over the whole thing. And my client, Mr. Jack Crawford, who has had super amount of success in the SRS on his own right, he was over there scratching his head. He said, I never would have dreamed a dog that good would have struggled so mightily on that drill. And the point that I made is that is the whole point of good drills, is that I was making the drill, I was addressing the issue that I was having, and I was really stressing getting not just the initial line, but the communication and the connection. Mason was wanting to be independent. He was wanting to stand away from me, and I was making him get by me, work with me, be a team. I was making him remember where he stood in the pack relationship, and he was not happy about it. But he forevermore melted down that day that we left. Mr. Jack was sitting there looking at me like, this dog won't leave the line. He will surely just blow up when we go and run. And he won that event going away. And it was the right correction at the right time to get the mindset right. And it was one of the most simple, basic drills that we do that brought that about. So Evan Graham always preaches, you drill for skill. And I truly believe that he's absolutely accurate there. You take these little things, little bricks build real big houses. And you take those bricks and you put them in the right place, and you make sure that they're hard and that they're set right and that they're what they need to be, where they need to be, and you can build upon that from there on. And that was it was a really good, I mean, I couldn't have scripted it out any better for him to do that poorly, but he did really poor and really struggled, but got everything he needed out of it. A lot of times good dog training doesn't look pretty. You know, we've talked about a lot of open and shut dog training stuff. Hey, you need to do this better and you're going to get this result. But a lot of times training looks just like human training. You know, a lot of times when you're in the weight room or you're circuit training, you're running, it's not such a pretty workout that gives you the greatest results. So just because you struggle doesn't mean you should go back and go, man, I did something wrong. A productive struggle is a good thing. Struggling is not the end of the world. Struggling will set you in a better place as long as what you're trying to teach is black and white, and you're making it easier for the dog to comprehend rather than harder. So go ahead.
So looking back at, let me take myself back to my childhood. And I look back at things. I'm an adult, probably I'm over the hump adult, but I still look back at lessons my dad used to tell me, or my mom used to tell me when I was a kid, that makes sense now, particularly like being a parent. Okay. So I got an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and the light comes on now. Do dogs learn on a more immediate basis exclusively, or do they learn long-term and short-term? Am I asking the right question?
I am. Do they learn on an immediate basis and in the long term? That's the only thing I'm not 100% sure on what you're asking.
Does a light click down the road to something you were trying to teach them before?
Yes, absolutely. So just like I pointed out on the other side effects that we're getting out of basic tune-up drills, dogs learn how to hit the water and gain water, and instilling that mindset that allows them to start doing addition when they're running complex concepts. They're not looking at the whole, they're looking at the parts. I'm doing the right thing here. I'm going to check this box, and then I'm going to check that box, and they can actually start. You'll see them start problem solving the equation as they go, not just reacting. So yes, they do learn in the long term as well as the immediate. Yes, Mason was two-sided, by the way, but my great-great-grandfather said that children did not come into the world knowing everything they should know, but the directions were on the bottom. And what he was saying is that, that not tough love in the sense that you're being firm but fair. Being firm but fair is going to lead to side effects like Tanner getting upset and you going, oh my gosh, I'm doing something wrong, I'm going to call him in. I'll never forget, I had a client years ago. He said the difference between you and me, he was talking about the difference between a pro and an amateur. He said, when things get tough and I'm ready to pull out and stop, you're digging in and saying, now we're actually getting to the point that we can teach something.
Exactly.
We're getting to the point that we can learn.
Mm-hmm.
And worked with another one of my guys. Same thing. We were doing force fetch concepts today, and I was pointing out the difference in his application and mine, and how I said, you're there. I took the same dog on the same element and did way more with it in just a few reps. And I said, I did not do this. You did. You just didn't realize how far down the road you had gotten. And with just a small application, small tweak of what I was asking, look how much different his response was. So don't be upset about struggles. Struggles aren't bad things if you are working toward a greater goal and have a clear purpose and plan in mind. That is where I'm hoping that we're going to start moving with you, is not just the what's and the whys, but having a plan on the journey of it and saying, okay, look, we just got an undesired response. We can fix that undesired response instead of just giving the same, a bigger differentiating angle. We can stop him. We can call him on his bad behavior and get a different response out of the same cast, a more correct response. It might not be the perfect response, but remember, again, train for momentum, precision will come. And understand in a concept like what we've talked about with these tune-up drills, momentum is always when they choose more water. When they've chosen less and you stop them and you say, no, that's not what I'm looking for. You're not looking for the perfect cast, that small differentiating perfect cast. You're looking for the dog to go, okay, the correct answer is water. Mm-hmm. Wow, that was a mouthful, even though we got started a little later.
Yeah. Thank you again. I mean, I'm glad we got the technical difficulty straightened out in the beginning. And Shannon, if you're still on here, you need to go back and binge watch all these because this is better than Yellowstone, baby.
Don't tell my wife that.
But again, once again, Stephen, thank you for your time. Looked like we had a good crowd, even though we had some technical issues at the very beginning. Thanks, everyone, for all your questions, your participation, your patience with me, and your ability to listen and learn from Stephen. This is the Retriever Connection with Stephen Durrance and Jake Latondras. Next week, we'll
Tuesdays, guys, remember, we're swapping for the foreseeable future. We're going to be doing Tuesdays for a little while till our schedules change again. Tell those folks that need to know. And let's remember, I promise you, for every person that's sitting on here, there's 30 that needed to be listening. So tell those folks that you see struggling with their dogs, and let's continue to grow this thing because it's a really good deal. Looking forward to it. See you next week. Thank you, Jake.
see y'all next week. Thanks for the hat. I love it.
That's good stuff.
I love it. See you guys later.